Okay, what is going on, everyone? So what follows in this video is a recorded conversation that I had with Alex from the YouTube channel AlphaDestiny. And I know that we have a lot of crossover audience, but for any of you guys who aren't familiar with Alex, he is the founder of outalpha.com, and I think his main claim to fame is his very impressive neck and trap development. And I've actually borrowed quite heavily, especially recently, from his training methodology and his general approach to getting the neck and traps to just explode, which he's had a ton of success with. If you go on his website and check out some of his programs, you'll see that he's had absolutely incredible results, not just himself, but with his clients. And I haven't really seen any collection of transformations like this anywhere. And so I wanted to have Alex on the channel and really talk about some of his approaches. We do focus on training. However, we also talk about the value of staying at a slightly higher body fat percentage as a natural, body recomposition, nucleus overload, and a bunch of other stuff. And you'll see that Alex and I don't necessarily agree on everything, which is fine. I think it's important to sort of keep an open mind and to expose yourself to different strategies in order to create the best possible approach that you can. And since this conversation went so well, I plan to do more recorded conversations or interviews like this on the channel, like I used to. And sometimes I'll interview scientists doing research, and other times I'll interview people who just have had outstanding results with a specific approach. And I think that to confine yourself or to suffocate your view to be so limited as to only look at those approaches which have been validated in the peer-reviewed literature is really a way to leave a lot of gains on the table. And so I think that this conversation with Alex is one that you guys will really benefit from. I know that I've benefited from it a lot already, and I've already been applying many of the principles that we talked about in this call. So I would encourage you guys, if you'd like to listen to the whole thing, watch the whole thing here on YouTube. There are some demonstrations where I think the visuals will be enlightening. However, I know it's a lot to sit down and stare at a screen for 90 minutes. So if you guys would like to tune into the audio portion only, I'm gonna upload this on my podcast. So for those of you who don't know, it's called the Ice Cream for PRs podcast, and it's available on iTunes and Stitcher, and I'll have more information about that linked in the description box below. So without further ado from me, I hope you guys enjoy this conversation with AlphaDestiny. All right, what is going on, everyone? So I am here with Alex from the channel AlphaDestiny for a much anticipated, highly requested collaboration. Alex, how you doing, man?
Fantastic, Jeff. How are you?
Good, man. I'm glad we finally got the chance to do this. When I said we'd be doing a call, people were freaking out.
Yeah, I mean, it's a long time coming, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me, and I look forward to our chat and sharing this knowledge and wisdom, you know?
Absolutely, man. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it myself, and I will say I'm a fan of the content. I'm a bit of a new fan. Ever since I started putting out a lot of my own neck and trap training on the channel, I've had a lot of people direct me toward your stuff. So probably, I want to say maybe like 6 months, maybe a little bit more than that ago, I just started binge watching a bunch of your content. So
okay, that's pretty awesome, man.
This is as much for me as the people.
Nice.
So Alex, just in case there's some people maybe who aren't familiar with you and your approach, I'd say we get started with basically you can just outline your naturally enhanced philosophy. That's something I hear you talk a lot about. Or if you'd like to go off into some of your other training stuff, I'll let you have the floor.
Right. Okay, so basically I follow a system called Naturally Enhanced. I wrote it myself. It's a full body, twice a week training system. And I use what is, well, obviously you know what periodization is. I follow concurrent periodization. And that essentially includes a weekly intensity workout and a weekly volume workout. Now, the whole system revolves around developing 6 essential muscle groups, which I've identified to be the most important for looking massive as a drug-free lifter. These areas include the neck, traps, upper back, shoulders, forearms, and glutes. Now, when you strategically develop these muscle groups, this is really what's going to add to your frame. This is the mass portion. This is what makes you look big in clothing. It's what you notice when a guy bulks up. It's what you notice in a guy who uses performance-enhancing drugs. Because of the androgen receptor sensitivity, it increases greatly with this drug usage. And you'll typically see a lot of guys who are enhanced. They have massive traps, very wide neck, bolder shoulders, things of that nature. So the whole thing behind the naturally enhanced philosophy is to develop these 6 essential muscle groups through using strength training strategies. Now, I use full body training because it allows me to be in the gym only twice a week, actually, while having a life. It would be the same thing if I ran a push-pull legs and upper lower, but full body is my preference. And I utilize concurrent periodization, which I can discuss more about that later. But essentially, I rotate special exercises that are specific to developing these 6 essential muscle groups. And I do that on a weekly basis. And we could talk more about that later on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to dig into a lot of that. But one thing that I do like about this approach is that it's quite unique. I don't know if it's unique to you, but it isn't something I hear a lot of people talking about, especially not in natural bodybuilding spheres. You hear a lot of people emphasizing, you know, like the chest, quads,
chest and the
arms. You don't hardly ever really, it seems to be gaining some traction in terms of popularity, but as of a year or two ago, you'd hardly hear anyone talking about directly training the neck. And the traps are almost seen as something that, well, if you don't take juice, you might as well give up on those because there's not enough androgen receptor there for them to grow anyway. So these have, I think, historically become very neglected body parts. And
absolutely,
you're kind of running a little bit counterculture, which I happen to enjoy because you see so much of the same sort of regurgitated, redundant information out there. And I find like you're presenting a very, I guess, different, unique approach with your naturally enhanced philosophy. So
it's certainly flipping the script around, you know, whereas most people want to be shredded and look good with their clothes off. For me, it's the opposite, you know, and whereas most lifters want to have just chest and arms, beach muscles, we're kind of doing the opposite thing. But it really is important, you know, the neck and the trap area especially. Like people don't realize what it does when you're just looking at someone face to face. Like when you see a jacked guy, man, it's neck and traps. You know, you're not looking at his chest and arms for the most part. I mean, you are there, but like, if I'm speaking to you face to face, you can see the yoke. You know?
Yeah, exactly. So okay, so the yoke.
The yoke.
This is a term I've heard prior to you, but you've definitely popularized it, I think.
The yoke.
Yeah. Yes. So what does that mean? What is the yoke?
All right, to get yoked means you got super wide neck. Mountainous traps, right? Boulder shoulders. Basically, it's the mass portion, right? You look massive in a t-shirt. It's the upper back that's popping out. Right. It's that 3D mountainous effect. So if I'm just talking to you face to face, you know, you'd see a wide neck that's freaking past the ears. You got traps popping out. And if I turn sideways, the upper back. You know, if I turn around, upper back. It's basically the area that makes you look massive. You know, we can also throw in the long head of your triceps technically, because that does make you look a lot beefier from the backside. But yeah, being yoked, it just means that you have that, you look like a bulldog. You know what I'm saying?
So I know you use bulldog there. Do you still use bear? Is that still
bear? Yeah. Well, I used that term for a long time, but I was having some problems, if you will, you know, because it was associated with a different type of culture. If you catch my drift, but
Yeah, I saw that video. So for the listeners who don't know, so Alex has this term called bear mode. I don't know if that's unique to you or not, but I mean,
I think it is.
Yeah, at least in the muscle and bodybuilding sphere. But basically, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but like the idea is to get that yoke area really developed, be at a slightly higher body fat percentage, so you look just thicker, bigger, more muscular, and then maybe add a little bit of body hair or what have you to sort of disguise that little bit of extra fluff, so you don't have that smooth baby fat look. Instead, you kind of have like a sharper, more grainy appearance while being really, really big.
That's 100% what it is. Yeah. And my channel, I talk a lot about losing strategies. Now, you got some guys that are like overly macho and stuff. They think that it's insecure, that you want to look good and all this stuff. But
right.
To me, it's fine. Like, first of all, when you bulk, let's be honest here, right? You're going to accumulate fat around your neck and cheeks. To me, it's very simple. Just cover it up.
Right.
Just cover it up, problem solved. Like, I remember I did clean shave about 2 weeks ago, bro. I saw all that neck fat, man. Now that I got my beard back, completely covered. So it's about maximizing the illusion strategies. You know, growing out facial hair to make yourself have a more angular looking face. You can do yourself, by the way. Clean shave, you'll see what I'm talking about. That's one facet of it, right? Then the body hair, too. People don't realize, but if you ever took an art class, right, there's a technique that's called cross-hatching, where you draw lines like in one direction and then another direction, then diagonal. You basically draw a bunch of lines, right? And it creates a grainy effect. This is commonly used when doing sketches. Now, we're not an art sketch, but bodybuilding is an art form, wouldn't you agree? And you can use these same strategies on your body. So when you grow out body hair, it creates that grainy effect. You know, it adds false definition, actually. And a really good technique is to you can create fake abs in a sense. You know, like you take an electric razor, you can go like number 1 on a few spots. It creates that shadow, especially if you already have abs. It fills in the abs with more definition. You know. So it's kind of like a cheat there. It's similar to what women use for their face, like makeup.
Right.
But you just use your natural body hair, and it flows well too because you don't have to shave. You're being natural, and it does make you look a lot leaner, right? So that's one facet of it in terms of looking leaner and big. But the next part of it is actually fashion too, wearing the right type of clothes. You know, that makes a big difference in how you appear. A lot of bodybuilders, they'll buy random stuff off the rack that's droopy around their arms, it's droopy around the waist, and it's not maximizing their aesthetics. You know. So if you focus on the fashion part of things too, you're going to look the best possible.
Right. So when's the AlphaDestiny fashion line coming out?
No plans on that anytime soon, Jeff.
So yeah, I find that to be really interesting too, because see, it's exactly the opposite of what a lot of top natural bodybuilders preach, which is shave everything, like even those little baby hairs, because when you're getting on stage, if you have that, it'll kind of show up and it'll just make the tan look not even and all that kind of thing. And I think that's a good approach if you are really, really shredded, because you will see all the striations. And I guess that in a sense, those striations can provide that sort of cross-hatching effect that you're talking about. But if you're not that lean, you don't see that. You just see skin.
That's exactly what it is. You got it. Basically, when you're really lean, you have a bunch of striations, you have the veins popping out, and the hair covers it. But if you're in a fluffier body fat, what striations? You know, what chest definition do you have? You know, so you create your own with the hair. You know, what ab definition do you have? You might have some, you know, a bit of definition with some obliques shown, but it's not going to be crisp. Like when you're in that contest stage, you have to shave it down to expose the vascularity and everything. But when you're bulked up, like, you got to cover it up with some hair. Otherwise, you look like a smooth baby man. That's what you look like.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it.
So Alex, you're a fan of guys maintaining a slightly higher body fat percentage. Is this sort of just like a long-term thing? Just you should always walk around bear mode, or do you like to do it in cycles where you cut down and then bulk up to add more muscle? How do you look at that?
Okay, it's kind of relative to the individual, because the thing is, there's natural appetite that has to be factored in, right? Like the true bear mode. Well, first of all, identify the range to be a 15 to 20% body fat, which is a lot leaner than what most people think. 20% body fat is most hockey players roam around 15%. Okay, so it's not, you can see your abs at 15%. Most guys who claim 10, they're most likely around 12, 13. Most guys who claim 15, around 20 or so. So the thing is, you want to hover around 15, 20%, right? But when you creep around 20, you're eating a lot of food, because it's a higher body fat percentage, and that could be kind of tiresome for some individuals. Now, guys who have a naturally crazy appetite, they'll be able to maintain that fairly easily. But people who were skinny their entire lives, or those who could lean out fairly easily, when they try to maintain 20%, they'll be force feeding all day. They might feel sluggish, tired. It might not be optimal for them. So that's why I say you got to calibrate. You got to figure out what is the optimal body fat percentage for you. Like for me personally, I tried reaching 200 pounds, which would have been around 20% body fat, but there's too much force feeding involved. So I feel that for me, 15% would be more ideal. You know, so I feel like it's an individual preference type of thing. And what you're doing is you find out what that body fat is, and once you hit it, you just recomp. Right. And we could talk more about recomping if you'd like.
Yeah, I think we'll get into it. But first, just to give people some perspective, I think I've heard you say you're 5'5". Is that right?
Thought I was 5'5", but I'm like a little bit taller. I'm 66.5 inches.
Okay.
So it's like 5'6" and 0.5 or something.
Okay. Like, so you're a bit taller than me, so that makes a bit of sense, because 200 pounds on me would just be ridiculous, I think.
It's only an inch though, you know, whatever.
Yeah, true. I mean, 200 is big. Just for context, I'll usually walk around in my off season somewhere around 165 to 170, but since kind of embracing a little bit more of this philosophy we're talking about, I've bulked myself up now to around like 173, something like that. And I'm going to try to just keep pushing it up, because I would probably fall more so into the the category where I can stay quite lean quite easily. Like I can maintain beach lean probably, you know, around 12% or whatever, without much difficulty. And that's what I normally do, because that's what you hear preached so much, is you need to, you know, stay lean, because I'm a competitive professional natural bodybuilder. So you hear that, you know, you need to stay relatively lean in order to reach stage condition. And so that's what I've always done, more or less. Yeah. Every now and then a bulk will get a little out of control, but it's always seen as a bad thing. Whereas I feel as though now, and you know, with your influence especially, I'm kind of starting to frame it as a good thing. It's like, if you do it the right way, this can actually look better than that, you know, 165 pounds, where if you're wearing a dress shirt or something, you could be, you know, perceived as not even lifting, or just being like a, you know, a hockey player or something like that, right? Nothing against hockey players, but certainly not a bodybuilder.
I'm sure you've noticed it yourself, Jeff. Now that your weight is increasing, has your shirt measurement, like, has it tightened up? Do you feel like more stacked in your clothes?
Of course. Yeah, exactly. So, Alex, where did this approach come from? Because like me, from a bodybuilding background, it feels very counterculture. Like I said,
yeah, it is counterculture. Sure.
What is your background? So do you have any aspirations to compete in natural bodybuilding? How do you look at natural bodybuilding? How do you see that approach?
Well, I respect what natural bodybuilders do. I think they put in a lot of effort and things of that nature. For me personally, I have no plans on competing on a stage. It's just not something that interests me. But more power to anyone who wants to do so, you know. Plus, there's a lot of fake naturals who compete in those shows, which kind of skews things a little bit. But the thing is, I'm not a bodybuilder, you know. And I take a lot of my influence from competitive athletes, like strongman competitors, powerlifters, and a big percentage comes from the old school strongman, like the guys from the 1800s and the 1900s, because they did a lot of weird things. Like one exercise that I preach a lot on my channel, being the rack pull above the knee, came from these men, you know. It's actually a modern version of performing the hand and thigh lift. So I would say it's more so a strongman type of approach, and heavy influence in exercise science and the powerlifting world. Like if you read Science and Practice of Strength Training, Super Training, Managing the Training of Weightlifters, things that, like the classics, you know. Yeah. You'll see where I get my knowledge in terms of exercise science, but in terms of like the physical aesthetics and stuff, it comes from the strongman competitors, wrestlers, field athletes, MMA fighters. It's kind of like a blend of everything, because, for example, the neck, right? The only people who've been training the necks for the most part have been old school strongman, fighters, and wrestlers for the most part, right? Like you saw Mike Tyson used to do a lot of bridging and things of that nature, but you don't really see bodybuilders training their necks. No. So that's why it's different in that regard, you know?
Yeah. So I would say that your primary goal then is probably to look as big and muscular as you can, so as to sort of like improve your aesthetic while walking around in clothes. Is that kind of the main thing?
It's maximizing the outer extremities of the body. That's what it is. It's not a bodybuilder type of look. It's not Mr. Aesthetics. It's looking massive. And the most important thing in doing that is the neck, to be honest with you. It will be the neck and the traps, hands down. Then the upper back would probably come second, you know? Yeah. And also another thing that differs me from bodybuilders is that I don't focus on outer quad sweep, because that gives you the X taper. Now the X taper is a highly desired look nowadays, but for me, I just go with the classic V taper. So again, it's like a blend of a bunch of different fields, you know, and you end up with this physique that's unique in itself. But it's a massive physique. It's a physique that looks very good in clothes. It's not the most aesthetic, but you definitely appear very large, you know?
Right. Yeah, I personally like the look. Like when I first got into bodybuilding, I wasn't even aware of natural bodybuilding. My dad was a follower of like mainstream bodybuilding. So I kind of grew up, and when I was first introduced to bodybuilding, I sort of looked up to the really huge physiques. Like I kind of wanted to look like a Lee Priest or so. Like even Lee Priest in his off season, I thought looked really freaky and awesome. And he was like, 5'4", 270 or something absolutely ridiculous, which would be absolutely not attainable for guys like you and I, but drug free, I mean. But it's a look that I kind of initially looked up to, and then sort of got away from when I was really immersed in the natural bodybuilding sphere, because people in that culture really embrace what has become to be known as the Ned Flanders effect. So basically, you accept the fact that in clothes, you're not really going to look like you lift.
That's right.
But when you take the shirt off, it changes the game, because especially if you're under good lighting and you're relatively lean, you will look really massive. If you have a pump, you're in the gym shirtless, you look crazy.
Yeah.
But that's a very small fraction of the time.
Exactly.
And I think that's the main issue with it. And I think a lot of these guys who want to look bigger and more muscular naturally might be better off actually taking on an approach similar to yours, where you encourage or at least accept a slightly higher degree of fat gain, put on a little bit of body hair to cover it up, and really focus on those 6 muscles that you kind of emphasize. Yeah.
But you pretty much you nailed it. Like I'm sure, given the fact that you've competed, right? You've dealt with these natural bodybuilders on stage. Like a lot of these guys get dwarfed very, very easily because they look good for a small portion of the time. Like you said, there's lighting involved, there's pumping, and they even have to prepare their meals in such a way that it maximizes their effect for that day. You know, there's a lot of course. It's complex here. So like I have a friend who competed on natural bodybuilding. He had great genetics too, and I saw him like a few days before he was competing. He looked very, very small, emaciated almost. First of all, his face was completely sunken in, and this was a guy that was massive, and he just looked tiny. He looked tiny as hell in the shirt, but when he took the shirt off and he got pumped up and everything, all of a sudden he looked pretty good there. But in natural conditions, which is 99% of the time, like you're not going to be in that situation, especially when you're walking down the street. I mean, who walks around shirtless all the time, pumped up, doing lat spreads, and like it doesn't really happen. Most people, you walk around completely relaxed, and that's what it is. And at natural lighting, go downtown, you'll see what you're really at compared to other individuals.
One criticism I think I'd expect you to get from this is that it's kind of a vain approach. So you're trying to look good just all the time. What is your why? To impress people downtown, or what's the goal here? At least as a natural, I'm trying to impress a panel of judges or what have you. It's at least slightly objective, right? So maybe I could disguise that vanity through competition, whereas you can't do that in the same way. How would you respond to that?
Well, I would say we're all doing this for selfish reasons, man. Let's be honest here, right? If you're a natural bodybuilder, you're selfish. If you're a powerlifter, you're selfish. And we all like validation, let's be honest, right? But that's not the main purpose. That's not the main purpose. You do this for you. You do this because you look in the goddamn mirror every single day, right? Yeah. I'm sure you do it all the time. Let's be honest. As lifters, we look in the mirror, we observe ourselves. We want to look as good as possible. So it's not about impressing other people. Certainly that is a cool factor. You're the big man. You walk around. You're big dude and everything. It's not what makes you. You really have to be in this for yourself. Like for me, like you said, it's counterculture. Why would I want to look like this if the ideal is to be Mr. Aesthetic with a low body fat? It's the opposite. You get more hate by being this way in terms of like the online fitness community. So it's not about impressing other people. It's about yourself. It's always been about yourself. And I believe that if you are lifting solely to impress other people, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. Like a lot of guys, they want to get beach bodies so they can impress chicks. Well, you might be able to do that short term, but after a certain amount of time, like if you're not lifting for yourself, you're going to get demotivated, and it's just not the way to go. You have to love the iron. You got to be so much in love with it that when you go to a gym, you put in all that effort. And it's for you. It's only for you.
It's interesting because you never will really be able to impress other people anyway, because there's just so many people out there, and they all have different ideals. Like you may prefer a look that's more yoked and a higher body fat percentage or whatever, whereas a lot of people do prefer that more shredded look. Like you'll see these polls sometimes on Instagram where it's like, do you like the shredded or the huge or whatever it is, and they'll have an actual bear that looks like it was like sketched or something, and different people will have different preferences. So you kind of have to do it for your own reasons. But I do find that people underestimate just how many people, including females, like that bigger, higher body fat look, right? A lot of people think that everyone, even online, is all about just the shreds. It's all about the shreds. I actually don't think that that's true. I think a lot of guys and girls like that, bigger, maybe like you have, a little bit of chub on your midsection, but you've got that, the big pecs and the big traps and everything. I think that's a good look a lot of people like. So.
I think they absolutely like it. And the thing is, if you are an actual natural bodybuilder and you're getting very shredded, your muscles are going to flatten out. You're going to look stringy, flat. So you're not going to, sure, you're more shredded, but you don't have that, that bulk to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And also a lot of women find it disgusting, to be honest with you, when you're single digit and you have like veins in your abs and shredded obliques and stuff. I mean, to us guys, we find it cool. It's like, yeah, I want to look like that. But a lot of women don't actually like that look. They'd prefer if a man were around 10-12% body fat, like a lean look, but not single digit necessarily. So I think guys, they'll feel good about themselves if they enter a higher body fat. They don't have to be slobs. It's just about being a bit more fluffy and embracing it.
Alex, just quickly back to the point of bulking and cutting. Do you
Yes, sir.
do cutting phases as well, or do you just kind of maintain the sort of bear mode look year round?
Well, I rarely have to be honest,
Yeah.
because my natural appetite kind of regulates that. But I'm a big believer in recomping. That's the thing. Well, I like finding the ideal weight, and then you build muscle, lose fat.
Right.
And the way to do this is by having certain days where you're in a deficit, other days you're in a surplus. And your body it kind of changes automatically. A lot of powerlifters do this. A lot of guys who have to make weight for certain sports have to do this. For me, it's very effective, and I gain strength fairly easily doing so. So I don't necessarily have to cut. However, if I was trying to get very lean, then I'd be forced to do a cut. And I will probably do one very soon.
So when you say recomp, I'm sure you've encountered the criticism where usually people will say this is only possible if you're taking steroids, or if you're a hardcore beginner, or if you're coming off of like an injury, or something like that. Do you disagree with that?
I disagree 100%. It's nonsense. First of all, I've had guys run my program, and in months they go from like 260 to 190-ish. They're bigger and stronger, and they get advanced numbers in the process. And I myself, in 2016, I got the most yoke possible, right? That's when my neck and traps got really big. I did it the entire time at 180 pounds body weight. I recomped the entire way. I did not have to do any bulking, any cutting. I built muscle, lost fat fairly easily. The secret is to manage your recovery. That is what kills guys when they recomp. If you don't manage your recovery properly, it's going to strip away your strength and your muscle. So again, with my system, it's full body twice a week. It's just twice a week. What is that doing to you that's going to stress? It's not a split routine that's 5 days a week. It's only twice a week full body now. Plus, we do a lot of soft tissue work to develop the tendons and ligaments and keep you injury free. And we pay attention in the gym. We refrain from ego lifting. If you're failing 1 rep maxes all the time, you're gonna have problems recovering. So the secret is to manage your recovery. If you can manage your recovery, if you can come back every single workout without feeling beat up and drained, you will be able to recomp. That is the way to do it. And like I said, the way that I do that is with full body twice a week and concurrent periodization, because I have a volume and intensity day year round, so I don't have to cycle through percentages. I'll explain this so you can understand a bit more, right? For the viewers anyway.
Sure.
When you run linear periodization, right, you begin with low percentages relative to your 1 rep max. And the percentage gradually increases until you peak for the 1 rep max, right? Yeah. Well, in the process, you lost a lot of the work capacity from the first phases, because you handle something like a 5x10. You are peaked specifically for low repetitions. Now, with concurrent, you're flipping the script around, because now we're maxing out year-round and we're performing volume work year-round. So you're not losing any work capacity. You can maintain a 5x10 every single week for years on end. And by doing this, you're in peak performance all the time. And that's why you don't suffer from recovery issues. That's why a lot of guys, they peak too soon with the linear periodization approach, and they suffer from overuse.
Right.
So if you can prevent overuse and manage recovery the proper way, then you will be able to recomp. Anybody could do it. It's not as optimal as bulking. Bulking is the superior way. Being in a slight calorie surplus, 10-20%, nothing will beat that. But you can absolutely recomp as an advanced lifter without drugs. You just got to do it right.
Interesting. Yeah, that's a controversial statement. I think a lot of people would disagree with you. I think that I can get on board with it just because I've seen it myself. I think part of the reason maybe why your recomp experience was so exaggerated in a sense is probably because maybe you weren't doing as much yoke training. So it was a very novel stimulus for you when you started doing it. So in a sense, for those muscles, you were kind of like a newbie again. And so you were able to build muscle and lose fat at the same time. Well, do you think that for someone maybe who's been doing that yoke training for, say, 5 years, 10 years, what have you, do you still think that recomping is the way to go? You should try to maintain a certain weight, focus on progression in the gym,
well, like I said, bulking will always be superior.
Right.
There's no debate against that. 10-20% surplus is the way to go. But do I think that you will not make gains if you recomp as an advanced lifter, say 10 years? No, I think you will make gains. And on the point that you mentioned that I was rather new to yoke training, that might be true. However, I did get stronger at a lot of conventional lifts. Like I took my strict press from 205 to 225, and I took my deadlift from 455 to 585. You know.
Yeah.
So that doesn't happen. That is something that I've been doing for a long time now. So even when it comes down to the non-enhanced muscles, if you will, everything got stronger. The key, what differs me from a lot of guys is that I focus on strength development for gaining size. I believe that if you get bigger and after neural adaptation ceases, hypertrophy will occur. So that's the focus. As long as you are gaining strength, you will eventually gain muscle. There's going to have to be some type of effect coming in, you know?
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big fan of strength training and even pure strength training for bodybuilders, even from a periodization perspective, because it seems like you periodize it mostly within the training week. So I want to talk actually about your split a little bit more, but to me it sounds something like it's a form of daily undulating periodization. So you have one day where you're going quite heavy and then another day where you're not going quite as heavy, but you're doing more volume. Is that right?
Yeah, it's pretty much that. Yeah. But you're rotating exercises every week. But that's exactly what it is.
Right.
But instead of rotating lifts that are specific to powerlifting, you rotate it to develop the 6 essential areas. For example, week 1, I might do a power shrug. Week 2, a trap bar shrug. Week 3, a behind the back shrug. Week 4, a snatch grip high pull.
Interesting.
So, and the thing is, you're maintaining volume and intensity year round, but you just rotate the lifts because if you read in the Science and Practice of Strength Training, right? Dr. Zatsiorsky states that after 3 weeks or so, the biological law of accommodation will come into play, right? And there's only 2 ways you can override it. You can either change the parameters, which includes the sets, the reps, percentages, things of that nature, something that you would see in block periodization, linear, things of that nature, or you could rotate the exercise.
Right.
I choose option number 2, and I find that it works very good for bodybuilding purposes because you can attack your muscles from a variety of different ways, you know? So I can do like high volume year round, but I'm just changing the shrug, for instance.
Right.
You know, I changed the rack pull. So it's great for building mass. You know, it's great for mass, great for strength gains, all that stuff.
Yeah. And just to finish my point, I think that strength training can have application insofar as it sort of carries over into that hypertrophy work. So say the work that or the strength adaptations that you get from your intensity day allows you to push even more volume on your volume day, which should then, translate to more hypertrophy over time, I think.
That's right. Like if you take a 500-pound deadlifter, he can rep 4 or 5, like a lot of reps. You know what I'm saying, or 315 for a lot of reps. Raising your absolute strength will always have a dramatic impact on what you could do for high reps. Now, it might not be the most optimal thing. There are diminishing returns at some point, and you do have to work in the lower percentages to get better at them because it's specific. Strength is specific in that way. But raising your absolute strength will absolutely make you better at higher reps. You know.
Right.
Yeah.
So just because I'm not overly familiar with this, you say you cycle exercises week to week.
Yeah.
Do you have any sort of emphasis on progressive overload? So do you come back? So say you start with the rack pull or whatever it was, and then you do trap bar or whatever. Would you come back to the rack pull and then are doing more weight 4 weeks down the road or whenever it is?
You got it. Okay. You got it. Okay. Say I do week 1 rack pull above the knee. Week 2 at the knee. Week 3 below the knee. Week 4 deadlift with bands, right? Week 5, I come back in. I do the rack pull above the knee again. Pretty much 99% of the time. Actually, I'll say 100% of the time I get a PR. It's guaranteed. Why is it guaranteed? Because I work through all different joint angles and I maintain my volume and intensity year round.
Right.
So the progression is automatic. It's literally automatic. The only thing you have to do is make sure that your total workload is high enough and that you're hitting in that 90% every week. Everything goes up automatically. Like it's the easiest thing in the world. It's so damn easy. I've made PRs every single week. Like last week, I failed 815 on my Jefferson rack pull below the knee. Last night, I got it. It's guaranteed every time. As long as you're rotating the correct special exercise that are specific now, you're going to be good. That's the key. If it's not specific, it's not going to work.
One thing I guess I would just be curious about is you emphasize a lot of recovery. One thing that comes up in my mind is doing a lot of this heavy training. So you're saying you're regularly doing 1 rep max training. Do you think that injury is a concern with that kind of training?
That is probably the greatest risk if you're going at 100% like I do, because I use the max effort method. But If people are worried about that, they could always do the Matt Wenning approach, which is going at 85, 90%. That certainly works. A lot of people who run Bulgarian light go at 90%. But for me personally, I just go 100% every time. And the reason why I'm not worried is because I'm rotating the variation.
Right.
And that prevents my nervous system from having issues like that. I'm overcoming the biological law of accommodation. And plus, I focus a lot on GPP, general physical preparedness, which further raises my work capacity and allows me to recover a lot better. We do a lot of soft tissue work as well in the form of band pushdowns. I do like 100 band pushdowns every day just to make sure that everything's recovering correctly. So, like I said, recovery is the most important thing. If you can find a way to do that, then you'll be able to max out year-round every single week. And again, I've been doing it over 3 years, maxing out. Never had an injury, never had a problem, and it's just going great.
I think maybe part of the reason why you can get away with that, not to say you're like getting away with something, but a lot of people will hear this style of training and think, yeah, that's not gonna fly for a lot of people because I'm sure, as you know, the ability to recover is itself very genetic and individual. And some people can put 315 pounds on the bar, do a back squat, and blow their lower back out very, very early in their training. It can happen. I've seen it. And so I feel like, as you sort of mentioned, you can take the foot off the gas pedal a little bit and go at 85, 90% max and still get very similar results. That seems to be more of a psychological approach where you probably want to max out your results in, get as much results as you can for your training, which is of course understandable. But what I was going to say was, I think part of the reason why you get away with that is because you only train twice a week. So there's just so much recovery in between sessions.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's a secret.
Yeah.
Like if you think about it, right? A push-pull legs, it's 2 times a week muscle protein synthesis for all the body parts.
Yeah.
Right? It's just divided. An upper lower, it's also 2 times a week muscle protein synthesis.
Yeah.
Now, if I do full body twice a week, it's also twice a week muscle protein synthesis.
Mm-hmm.
What's the difference? I'm only in the gym twice a week.
Yeah.
And the thing is, we still use the same nervous system. People don't think about this. And there's also a certain degree of crossover that occurs when you do certain exercises. So, for example, your pull day and your leg day, there might be some exercise that interfere with the recovery.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So when I'm only in the gym twice a week, I get 72 hours recovery. Like, it's the easiest thing to recover from. And that's why it works with the recomping too, because it is a full body twice a week. If there was a more strenuous program, like a 5-day bodybuilding split, it'll be a lot more difficult to do. So that's why I'm saying recovery is very important. And with the concurrent and the soft tissue work and the GPP, all this stuff kind of molds together. Right. And it keeps you injury-free while being able to make good strength gains and stuff like that.
Right. For me, I love training so much that I feel like I would hate to run something like that. I mean, just because I like to be in the gym. I mean, this is basically my career, and it's something that I love to do. So for me, I feel like I would get bored on my rest days. Is that something you hear a lot of from guys who maybe want to take on this approach?
Yeah, some guys. It's kind of like it goes both ways. Some dudes are just in love with training. They want to go ham every single day,
Yeah.
Some guys want to train 7 days a week, even twice a day. Yeah. That happens. You have guys like that. I used to be like that. But as time has passed by, like, I really enjoy this twice a week setup. It works very well for me.
Yeah. And
it comes down to the psychology of the individual.
Yeah.
Some guys, they want to be in the gym 5-6 times a week. Others a bit less. For some dudes, this is a life changing thing for them because they have full-time jobs. Yeah. They have a family to raise, and the fact that they can build a good physique with only twice a week, like, to them, it's wow. They're happy about that. So it does depend on the individual. For me, like, it doesn't matter because I have a lot of other things that I do in my life. Fitness is not like the main thing necessarily. Plus, I still do my GPP 2 to 4 times a week and my soft tissue work. So I'm still doing something, And the nutrition too. Nutrition is year round.
Yeah, of course. I will say I've noticed, because for the longest time I've been more of a high frequency advocate in the sense that I'm in the gym very frequently, not necessarily training a body part very frequently, but in the gym 5-6 days a week at least for probably 10-11 years. So it's something that I've gotten very used to. I have stepped back a couple times and only train a day on, day off, for example, rather than consecutive days, 6 days in a row. And I will say my training sessions feel so much better with that extra couple days of recovery, at least for a while. I can only imagine how fired up you are for your sessions if you're only going in there twice a week. I think that could have merit in and of itself. Like, you're almost like just itching to get in there and train as hard as you can. Yeah.
Well, the lifting is very, there's a huge psychological component, man.
Yeah. And
it really is. It's mindset, man. It's mindset. And when you go in there like itching, you really want to hit it bad, man. You get PRs and you put that effort in.
Yeah.
You know, especially with a full body. Full body is not easy, man. You come out there really, really drained. Your whole body's sore. It's not easy. So you have to have the willpower to pull that off, and you have to want to get it really badly, you know? Yeah. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And a lot of times when I hear, full body training, it's usually in the context of very high frequency training. Beginners, but also, I mean, there's some guys who advocate it for more advanced guys because you do get those very frequent blips in muscle protein synthesis. But it's usually, your full body training 5 days a week or 4 days a week or something like that. But it's very low volume, low intensity sessions. What do you think of that sort of full body approach?
Yeah, I used to train like that for years, actually. That's what I did before Naturally Enhanced. Yeah. And I got very good gains off it. But the only problem with it is that it's highly auto-regulated. You have to know your body inside and out, and everything has to be freaking perfect.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, when you do full body twice a week, it's 72 hours recovery. It's perfect. You got volume day, intensity day, boom, you're good to go, nothing to worry about. Now, when you're going multiple days a week, like you said, the volume has to be lower, right? The exercise selection has to be very intelligently selected. Yeah. And you're only getting 48 hours recovery now. So everything, you can't be too much, you can't be too low. You might have other problems with the nervous system. Like if you do a heavy day on Monday, then Wednesday you got to come back in again. Might be a bit difficult. So I found that the problem with that is that it's too auto-regulated. But if you know your body well enough, you could pull it off, And also, like, I don't know if you've seen Brad Schoenfield recently. Did you see what he said about the frequency thing?
Yeah, I think so. It's basically something to the effect of as long as weekly volume is the same, the actual number of times you hit a body part is less important. Is this what you're talking about? No?
Yeah, well, recently, I think about 2 weeks ago or something, he made a post on Facebook saying that he did a meta-analysis, right, on a bunch of studies that compared frequency and stuff. Yeah. And he might be concluding soon that training more than twice a week, like muscle protein synthesis wise, might not be a significant driver of hypertrophy.
Yeah.
For strength training,
the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So even if you are training full body 4 times a week, is that superior to twice a week? You also have to factor in the recovery, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If it's more strength, if it's killing your recovery, then it's not going to give you better gains. Like, again, as long as you're getting better recovery and progressive overload is taking place over time, I think you're good. And that's why push-pull legs, upper lowers, all that stuff works.
It all works. Yeah, I agree. I actually have a long conversation with Menno Henselmans, who's a scientific author on my channel, and he's a big advocate of that high-frequency approach where you get those frequent blips in muscle protein synthesis. I think it is a bit ahead of the curve in terms of where the research actually is. I think that the best thing we can conclude is that twice a week is probably almost definitely better than once per week. And that seems to be true even if volume matched. That isn't to say 1 time a week isn't effective or can't work or doesn't have potential merit, but I think that twice a week is all that we can say for sure is probably better, and higher frequencies may or may not be, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, what I would say is that higher frequency benefits strength athletes primarily. Like you saw the Norwegian study. Obviously, that demonstrated that. I think they gained twice the amount of strength compared to those who train like half the time. So for strength, it works very well. Like Bulgarian Light, for instance, it's every day 90%, and you get strong very, very fast. Yeah. Like it's not uncommon to add like 50 to 100 pounds on your lift in less than a month. Yeah. This could happen even as an advanced lifter. It really does happen. But are you going to gain as much size? I'd be inclined to say no. I would say no, because there's a lot of neural adaptations that are taking place. You're also treating the movement as a skill, So might not be the best for hypertrophy. And that's why I think twice a week is a good range to recommend for the majority of people. And you can't go wrong with it, It's also good for your recovery.
Yeah, a lot of that does have to do with the fact that strength is a skill, so you're practicing it more frequently, whereas building muscle is not so much of a neural component. Like you said. Digging a little bit more into your training, say within each of those days, are there certain exercises that you think guys should focus on, or certain things guys should focus on who want to build up their neck and traps? So just take me, for example, and we can kind of run through me, because most people probably might be in a similar situation that I am. I've obviously been training for like 10, 11 years, but as a natural bodybuilder. So there was a lot of, I start with body part splits, get into push-pull legs. Occasionally I'll run an upper lower, but usually I'm running some kind of like push-pull leg variation or whatever. And I've done that for a long time, and there's a lot of focus, on, as we've kind of talked about, the bodybuilding muscles. That's right. Over the last year or so, I've really taken a liking to training my neck, my traps, and this sort of thing, but I'm still fitting it into that sort of general template. So like I'll hit it at the end of a back day or something like that, right? I've been doing things like plated neck curls. I'll do like partner assisted neck curls with my girlfriend, which I actually find to be really, really good. I actually like those better than the plate loaded variations.
It is.
And I've been doing more recently rack pulls and mostly just heavy barbell shrugs, and then some direct neck work. What sort of recommendation would you have from me? Because I still, even though I've actually made a lot of progress over the last year or so, because like I had literally no experience. So it was like my neck and probably traps were about the same that they would have been in grade 9 as like a 25-year-old, right? but now they're kind of on the come up a little bit, but I still kind of like want to take it to the next level. So what would you say I should focus on in my training?
Okay, good. I like this. So, first of all, do you have a neck harness, right?
Yeah, I do. I actually don't use it that much. So let's hear about it. Okay.
Well, I would definitely make use of that because the weight capacity is going to be a lot higher than just using plates. Okay. Right. For example, if you do the neck extension with a plate on the back of your neck, you'll be limited to about 45 pounds or so. Right. Now, the secret in developing your yoke is to use very heavy weights. Okay. Because it's weighted stretching that gets you yoked. Bottom line, it is the weighted stretch, my friend. Think about the farmer's walk, right?
Yeah.
What is it that builds your traps in the farmer's walk?
You're
just holding weights, man. It's just stretching you out. There's no shrugging component. Every strongman competitor who does it swears by the trap gains.
Yeah.
So the farmer's walk is very effective, but you can make it more effective. Put some heavier weights. And that's why I'm a big believer in the rack pull above knee. So I'll give you the formula, right? And you probably heard this in my videos, but I'll say it again. There's 4 things you need to do. A heavy rack pull, a heavy power shrug, heavy cheat row, and then a lot of direct neck work. Those are the 4 facets of it, okay? The rack pull is going to give you the greatest weighted stretch of all time. There's nothing that could surpass it. It is far superior to the deadlift for the purpose of building your traps because you could use a lot more weight. And also you're not loading up the posterior chain as much either.
Right.
So you're taking a load off that, and if you're doing like a body part split, like on a pull day, it's excellent to incorporate, and you can still do your deadlifts on the day after, without interfering with recovery too much.
Gotcha. Yeah. On that note, real quick, I think you're not a huge fan of EMG research, which is fine, but I think that there is actually some activation research to support this. I looked at, I think it was a PhD dissertation where he looked at deadlifts off the floor, and then the greatest amount of trap activation was like just at or passing above the knee. So that is interesting. Like even if it wasn't effective from a pragmatic perspective, you do have that theoretical backing from an activation perspective too. So anyway.
Well, I that's cool. Yeah, and I saw your video too, and it was very good on building the neck traps. But going back to the rack pull.
Yeah.
You have to get strong at it, very strong at it. And the thing is, your traps are incredibly strong. Like, you have no idea, man.
Yeah.
Just the other day, I have a guy that I follow. He rack pulled 1,700 pounds. As a natural here. You could use superhuman weights on this exercise.
Right.
So the traps have so much potential, and I find that people are not attacking it correctly. So for you, Jeff, I would shoot for at least 1,000 pounds on the rack pull above knee, minimum. Start with that.
Okay.
Shoot for 1,000 pounds. All right. And then we could talk more about advanced strategies. And the way you could build that up, there's tons of ways you could do it. You could do my method, which you rotate the rack pull heights, kind of like a progressive range of motion setup, like Paul Anderson would do, George Lehman. Or you could just use your regular training parameters. I mean, you know what you're doing. You're the man. You're the dude. So get a stronger rack pull, right? Also incorporate the power shrug. A lot of guys are doing 50-pound dumbbell shrugs, and they're squeezing at the top. Not optimal for building your traps for the vast majority of lifters who don't have high androgen receptor sensitivity in the traps. When you're on drugs, you inject, traps blow up. And all you got to do is lightweight, fluff and pump. I say screw that. Use some heavy weights, heavy barbell shrugs, heavy dumbbell shrugs even. Get that weight to stretch. And the thing is, when you do a power shrug, the weight to stretch is pronounced even more because you're here, right? And the weight comes down very fast.
Yeah.
So your traps are catching this weight, and it creates a very powerful effect. That's why Olympic lifts tend to be effective for building the traps. Power cleans, snatches, snatching up high pulls. It's the increased velocity that's making a big difference. It's catching the weight. It makes the weight to stretch pronounced. So I would definitely include a power shrug of some type. And then some cheat rows, man. Listen, forget about that whole like stationary back thing.
Right.
Nah. Use a bit of body momentum. It's again going to further the weight to stretch. And if you ever did a deadlift at the bottom position or a hyperextension even, when you feel your traps at the bottom of deadlift, they're being pulled because your body's horizontal.
Yeah.
Well, when you do a cheat row, you're maximizing that weight to stretch because you're catching weights at the bottom. So don't just be stationary like that slow and controlled stuff. Nah, use a heavier weight. Get some body momentum. Again, don't sacrifice the lower back. Don't round the lower back, but use a heavier weight. Get the stretch. You'll know what I'm talking about, especially on things like heavy T-bar rows. Stretches the traps beautifully, right? And then the most important thing, you have to isolate your neck, okay? Too many guys don't isolate their necks because they think that it's replicating a certain activity that is done in the bedroom, and they're insecure.
Okay.
But you got to isolate it. And I would say the most important part for building the traps in particular is the neck extension with the harness. Because it has the greatest weight capacity, and neck extensions will raise your barbell shrug. Okay, and it also works your upper traps to a large extent. Right. If you ever did a heavy neck extension, you'll feel your upper back getting pumped. You'll feel the upper traps like all the way up to the top. And the thing is, I believe anyway, it might be bro sciencey, but it increases the nuclei in your muscle cells. Right, it increases your satellite cell production, and I can go more about that if you want. It's a bit that's controversial if I get into that topic, but I believe that it increases the nuclei in the upper back and the traps, therefore making it easier to build.
Interesting.
So you got to train your neck.
I don't know if it's bro science or not, but certainly you can increase nuclei in muscle if they're being activated, and so the nuclei overload theory, is this something that's you invented, or is this something?
I did not invent it.
No, okay.
Give a shout out to my boy Megan of Team 3D Alpha. I give him 100% of the credit.
Okay.
Basically, his theory is that by training a muscle group every single day, first of all, you desensitize myostatin, which obviously that plays a role in preventing your muscles from growing and stuff. So you desensitize that, and you develop more nuclei in your muscle cells. And what he references is athletes who train at a young age. For example, those from the Soviet Union, right? You mold them at a young age, and it gives them better genetics in the future. It gives them more nuclei. And for example, let's say you did football your entire life, American football, and now you're into bodybuilding. You're 20 years old. You start bodybuilding training. What we find is that when they start training their neck and their traps, it blows up fairly easily. Why? Because they have more nuclei in their muscles. Same things for sprinters. If you competed in track and field when you were younger, well, now if you start doing barbell back squats and deadlifts, your posterior chain might improve. You might see develop in that region. Same thing if you did swimming at a young age. If you start doing bodybuilding, you might find your shoulders and your back blow up. Right. So there seems to be like a strong correlation. Again, correlation does not imply causation here. We could just assume that it has to do with the genetics, and that people with better genetics are likely to see these results. That's a possibility. But nonetheless, there seems to be a correlation that those who competed in sport at a younger age, when they start bodybuilding, these muscle groups that they use in the sport tend to hypertrophy significantly. And that's the theory behind nucleus overload. And it's stated that you can replicate that by training a muscle group every single day for long periods of time, and then taking a week off, and now you have more nuclei on your muscle cells. And that's also one of the reasons why once you are enhanced, if you decide to cross the natty line, you can never be natural again because you will have more nuclei on your muscle cells.
Yeah. It's an interesting theory. I would probably call it more of a hypothesis than a theory because it doesn't really. I don't know if there's any scientific research actually investigating it. So what you'd have to do is take people who maybe weren't as athletic, say, as children, right? Who maybe don't have that gene, and then use them as a cross reference to see if they start training at a young age, and then their muscles blow up. Then you could get rid of that genetic potential confound.
You're right. So you can't test it like that. All we can do is speculate and look at the anecdote. But we do know there's a correlation. Again, we don't know what that correlation constitutes. It might be other factors related, but
Yeah.
I think it works.
Yeah. I mean, in any case, if it works, it works. What the mechanism is, I think, is less important from a practical perspective.
Yeah.
And I think that if taking a week off training has been shown in research to be a good idea anyway. So whatever's going on there, I think it probably has merit if it's been effective. And that's something that I just like in general about having these sorts of conversations is you've obviously had outstanding results with this approach, and so that should stand on its own, and we should take it seriously, right? Because ultimately what we're after is results, I think, more than explanation, at least in my case. That's true. So
that's a good point. Well, I know your videos focus a lot on science explained, and I dig that. That's cool, because you analyze all the studies, you give your analysis and stuff, and it's good. It's well done. But personal experience, that stuff plays a role too, and I'm sure that you've been training for a long time. You know what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and maybe that will interfere with some of the studies. Yes, sometimes, man, anecdote is so damn powerful that we just gotta listen to it. Some of the greats use certain strategies that we know works today. Like progressive range of motion, for instance. Bob Peoples used it, Paul Anderson, George Lehman. It's an effective technique, where you gradually reduce the height of the pins or whatever until you're doing full range of motion. This stuff works. Old school hand and thigh lifts, even the big three, like all these exercises are time tested and effective. And sometimes we don't need a study demonstrating that they do work. And I know that in the case of the rack pulls, when I first started recommending them, many people were skeptical until they tried it themselves. When they tried it, man, they got amazing results. And from that point on, I became the rack pull above the knee guy.
Yeah.
So,
I think that my approach could probably be summarized as I like for science to sort of guide practice. It informs us on things that probably work. Then you go out and, you test it for yourself and this sort of thing. But I also take those anecdotes and people who've had success in the field into consideration, because you almost in some cases it would be nearly impossible to design the study to sort of capture everything that's going on. And so you have to take clues from all of these different stuff, right? And then put together an integrated approach.
Especially with exercise science, a lot of the studies they don't have a lot of funding there, and they're very limited in their duration.
So that's a huge limitation.
And the biggest problem that I see too is that they test a lot of noobs. They test a lot of noobs, and I got a bit of an issue with that. Because noobs think that advanced lifters, it's different. That's why I've heard from some athletes that you gotta study the best, not necessarily a first-year lifter or something.
It certainly is a limitation, but sometimes you need to study on noobs because that's the only way to detect a significant effect. So if you had advanced guys, then you could almost put them all on very different stuff. But with the samples that they have, say, sometimes it's as low as 10 people. It's really hard statistically to detect an effect if you don't have newbies where you can actually tease out those differences, right? So that is a criticism you hear, and that's why you have to be careful when you apply it to advanced people, right? This is why as you get more advanced, you need to take in more than just the basics.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. And I think that's also what I liked about your in your science explained video with the arms. You mentioned that you pretty much have to curl if you want bigger arms, and I agree with that 100% because sometimes you'll find in noob studies that when they do lat pull downs and things of that nature, the biceps hypertrophy, right? But are you seriously telling me that if you've been training for 5-10 years, you're gonna maximize your arms doing freaking lat pull downs? Get out of here, man.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I totally agree, man. Totally. Okay, so back to my training program, so I can get yoked.
Yes.
So you say focus on getting 1,000-pound rack pull.
Yeah.
So as of right now, and I'm going to be selfish and focus on me right now and hope that maybe some people can relate.
This one-on-one, man. Let's do it.
You can send me the invoice after.
Sure.
I'm basically battling this injury, so I actually have a pretty extensive powerlifting background as well. So I've got a lower back injury that I haven't had a actual professional diagnosis on that I've been fully satisfied with. But it's an issue to the point that I have to be quite careful. Now, I've gone from basically doing a rack pull of 135 up to, I think yesterday or the day before, I did 455 for a set of 10, which is pretty damn good for me given my injury. And I rely on a belt a lot just to keep everything tight. Is there something you'd recommend I do to get my strength up to that level? Like I'm still going relatively higher rep just because I'm still a little bit tentative to go to the like heavy, like, you know, below 5 rep stuff.
Yes. Okay. I'll give you the best advice of which I'm capable, right? And do realize I'm not a medical professional here, so I'm assuming that you don't have some serious disc injuries and that what you're dealing with can be dealt with, you know, with correct training. I'm under that assumption right now, okay? So first of all, the higher reps, you're doing reps of 10. Like how many sets? Are you doing like a 5x10 or something like that?
No, I'll pyramid my way up and I'll do
so like
3 sets of 8 to 12.
But you ramp it every time? Every set you increase the weight?
I'm pyramiding up as kind of like warm-up sets, but I do quite a bit of reps on them. So it's not like just a warm-up, you know?
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. What I found is that even for deadlifts, right, higher repetitions tend to fatigue the lower back the most, right? So if you want to get around that, just flip it around by doing more sets than reps. So if you're doing 3 sets of 10, do 10 sets of 3. Okay. This way you get the same amount of workload with the same weight, except now you're not having all that fatigue creeping up.
Right.
And to get the metabolic fatigue, you just 30-second rest intervals. So you keep it low rest, high sets, low reps.
Right. So for me, in my case, because I probably wouldn't want to jump right to like a 3, I could probably do some kind of like reverse switch where I could like bring it down to like, you know, 5 sets of 6 or something like that first, and then, you know, see how that goes and slowly bring up the sets and bring down the reps. I feel like that'd be probably pretty effective. That's exactly
what I'm recommending. So you switch it around for volume work now, you know, for volume work.
Yeah.
And also like, another thing too for the technique, you have to do it with the body being upright. Okay, you have to make sure that the weight is actually above your kneecap and not on your kneecap. Okay, if it's on the knees directly, you're gonna end up being too bent forward, and that'll work the spinal erectors a little bit too much. Right? You want your body being very, very upright, like you're doing a quarter squat almost. You know, so maybe leaning back a little bit and actually digging the weight with your thighs. That's why the old school lift, it was called the hand and thigh lift. That could be very beneficial. You know, because I've had guys with herniated discs be able to perform this exercise just fine. You know, with serious injuries here, because there is less shearing of the spine. You're not in a bend forward position. The moment arm is much smaller. So it is a relatively safe movement, I would say. So the secret is you have to be upright when you're doing it. Perhaps in your case, I would refrain from doing below the knee rack pulls for now, at least for now, right? And even at the knee. Make your body very, very upright. You'll be able to use a lot more weight, and it'll feel better in the lower back too. But when you lean back, don't be like freaking turning into a banana now, because otherwise you're gonna get snapped up. Make sure you're upright to it. And I would even look up, you know.
Right. Yeah, I like that advice for sure. And then the other exercise you said was a power shrug. So how does this differ from a regular shrug? How are you doing that?
Before I talk about the power shrug, I feel like my advice has been suboptimal for you.
Okay.
So let me backtrack a little bit, okay? Because it's not just enough to do rack pulls. I would also recommend for you spinal traction work. Okay, if your gym has access to reverse hyperextension machine, definitely make use of it.
Okay,
because it'll traction the lower back and build the tissues at the same time. It's a restoration and strength builder simultaneously. I would do like 40,000 pounds of work on that exercise for real. Just blast the volume in it, and if you have access to it, I don't know if your gym has it there, but it would definitely help you tremendously. The reverse hyperextension.
Gotcha. Yeah, I that's a tough machine to come by, but I think I could probably rig one up like in a makeshift way if I don't actually have the machine, using like a ball or something. I've seen it done.
Some good substitutes would be the sled pull. That also provides traction benefits, or hooking up bands to a glute ham raise machine or a hyperextension machine. Gotcha. Then you could just do it in reverse like that, or wearing ankle weights of some sort, you know. But you definitely want to traction out that spine, open up the discs, and another thing too. I saw your video on spinal flexion, right? It was good analysis, but perhaps training spinal flexion could be beneficial. Perhaps. Again, this is a bit, you know, some guys, it's debatable, you know, you got like Stuart McGill, and, you know, it's debatable in this subject, but I would say that training spinal flexion can perhaps prevent, because if you're ever put in that position and you never train those positions, well, you know, maybe that will cause a problem.
Interesting.
So take that one with a grain of salt, but definitely include some traction work for lower back. Right.
What do you think about dead hanging? That's something I've started to do a bit.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of dead hang, especially when the sacrum is rotated at the same time. That's why like hanging leg raises very beneficial for guys who have lower back problems, depending on how the discs are, you know, protruding or anything. Yeah. So hanging leg raises, even hanging upside down. Like I know Donnie Thompson, he has like 3 herniated discs, And what he used to do is hook up a band to the top of a power rack, and he would hang upside down by using the band.
Interesting.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. I know you're big on doing things that make you look ridiculous in the gym.
Oh, this looks ridiculous. Yeah. You're just upside down with a band freaking anchoring you, but it does work. It pulls, you know.
Yeah,
and you can even do twisting motions. Again, Donnie Thompson had one of the highest powerlifting totals of all time, multiply, and herniated discs at the same time, and he was able to recover himself by doing these lifts, you know.
Interesting.
So hang upside down. If you have an inversion table, make use of that. But yeah, you want to treat the lower back. You want to develop the strength of it, train the tissues, and when you do the rack pull, use correct technique.
Yeah.
So yeah, now I'll go on to the power shrugs.
Let's hear it.
All right, power shrug. What do you want to know about it?
So how does it differ from just a regular barbell shrug? Let's say, what's the power part referring to?
It's the fact that the traps can handle extreme weights, and a regular shrug will never offer you that weight. On top of that, the range of motion is already very small in a regular shrug. So you mean to tell me that doing a weight very, very strict like this is going to be that much different from using a little bit of body momentum? In terms of contraction, not so much. It's a very small range of motion. It's this is the range of motion. So you might as well do a power shrug and get a lot more weight on there. And like I said before, you are maximizing the weighted stretch, which is key. The weighted stretch is how you build muscle in the traps. It is the best way to do it. So you're still getting the shrugging component. You're still squeezing at the top, but you use leg drive to get it up there. Then on the way down, it's really pulling on those traps. You'll see it. If you do power shrugs, try this next time you work out. If your lower back doesn't bother you, do a 5 sets of 20 on a power shrug. Just bam, like go very, very explosive. You know, you'll feel how sore your traps are the next day.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you don't really focus on like a squeeze or a controlled eccentric. You're kind of just moving the weight up and down and feeling that stretch.
For the traps, absolutely not. I don't focus on slow eccentrics. However, I might do stuff like that at the end of the workout. So if I did like 3 movements before that focus on the yoke, they were all very heavy and fast, and maybe my last movement will be a dumbbell shrug with like 100 pounds, and I'll do the squeezing and stuff just for some volume, you know. So I would reserve that for the end of the workout, or you use that as a part of a drop set. So you might do a power shrug. Let's say you load up 600 pounds, and you do some power shrugs, right? Well, now you strip it down to 400, and now you do it strict.
Right, yeah.
You can do drop sets with the strict form. You don't have to drop strict completely, but definitely make use of that leg drive.
Gotcha.
And think about Olympic weightlifters who their exercises are 100% explosive. There's no slow centrics on these snatches and stuff like that, okay? And it's building up the traps.
What kind of weight should I be using for a shrug, and what kind of reps are you recommending?
Okay, a weight that allows you to get at least like whatever allows you to hit 5x5. Start with that.
Okay.
Or a 5x20.
What should that be? Because the way I've historically shrugged has been more controlled, and honestly, I've come from a background of so-called science-based, or I shouldn't say so-called, but science-based.
Oh, it's science-based.
Philosophy where if you're doing, back exercises, you're doing rows, what have you, you don't do your upper traps. That's bro science kind of thing, right? It's really is neglected a lot, I find. It's not an exercise I've done a lot of, so I don't have a lot of context like I would for, say, like a back squat. Like I should know what I should be able to do by pretty good standards there. What would be a good power shrug?
Okay.
Weight?
Well, what numbers are you hitting right now on the strict barbell shrug?
I'm doing like I think around 405 for like 12 to 15, something like that.
You're doing that strict? For real?
There's a bit of body English, but it's like I think it would be stricter than what you're describing. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you could probably do 100 pounds over that. You could probably throw on 500 right off the bat, hit that for sets of 20 instantly.
Yeah, for sets of 20. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, you probably could. But try the sets of 20. The thing is, it's very hard.
Yeah.
This is not easy, my friend. 5 sets of 20. It comes out to 100 total reps with a heavy weight. So you see what we're doing here? We're getting volume, but we're using a heavy weight at the same time by using the legs to assist in the movement.
Right, yeah. See, that's something that I don't do. I should really try to minimize the involvement of my legs, but it will allow you to get the weight up. And then if what you're saying is true and the stretch is the most important thing, then it makes perfect sense, right?
Well, it is. Yeah. It is, man. And the thing is, it's the same eccentric. It's just a faster eccentric. You're still getting it, right? And you're still shrugging at the top. Yeah. And a lot of guys, I'm sure you've heard them say that the tempo, the concentric could be very fast, right? It's mainly the eccentric where guys tend to slow it down.
Yeah.
But with the traps, you don't need slow eccentrics in the first place because it is the way to stretch. That's why farmer walks. There's there's no range of motion. You're just stretching it out. So I think you will benefit from it greatly if you give it a shot.
Okay, awesome. Number 3 was the cheat row.
The cheat row, yeah.
Explain that to me.
Way to stretch, man. You're using heavier weights. A lot of guys they do, for example, strict dumbbell rows. They might max out the stack, and it hits their okay. How most guys they row to their hip to really hit the lats and stuff.
Yeah.
How many guys who are rowing higher up on the body and they're using a lot of body English? Not too many people. So what we're trying to do is reverse it. We're reversing the script, and cheat rows will again it allows you to maximize the way to stretch. You can do it yourself. Put your body in a bent over position, right? With your arm just stretch, you feel the traps instantly. Now, if you're using a lot of body English, on the way down, it's pulling hard on those traps, especially the T-bar row. The T-bar row, if you use your legs to assist in the movement, on the way down, those traps are being stretched the hell out, man. So it's about getting more weight in. Again, you don't necessarily have to cheat row. I would say the power shrug is more beneficial, but I think that because you can lift more weight and you're getting more stretch, it's a better thing to do in my opinion.
Interesting. So when you say cheat row, is this basically you're using your legs to drive the momentum, or are you using a partial range of motion? Like you hear cheat, usually cheat is in the context of a shorter range of motion, right?
It's full range of motion, right? Lower back remains tight 100% of the time. The difference is that you're raising your torso and using more leg drive. Yeah. Think a Pendlay row and that type of context, but in a barbell, like in a regular type of fashion, right? So it's not what people think it is, where you're contorting your body and you're doing these weird movements. The lower back always remains tight now. Right. If your lower back can't be tight, you're lifting way too heavy. You're gonna get hurt. So it's a very simple thing. Like most guys, they're completely stationary. They don't move a single muscle in their entire body. They're just one position. They're rowing. I'm saying use a bit of body English. Raise the torso a little bit when you do it, and pull fast as well. Pull fast. Use those legs as if you were to do a deadlift almost. And you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll lift a bit more weight, maybe about 50 pounds more weight or so.
Yeah, interesting.
Depending on what exercise you're doing.
Yeah. I personally like the T-bar row just because even the chest braced one I'll do sometimes just because it gives my lower back a little bit more support, so I can load it a little more heavily. But yeah, lately I've been doing just like the T-bar row in the corner, like Ronnie Coleman and those guys.
Yeah,
used
it's
to
a great lift.
Yeah,
it's probably for me it's my favorite way to do the cheat row.
Yeah. All right, so Alex, we'll clue it up because your fourth tip was direct neck training. So how about we finish on that? Because I know a lot of people will want to hear your take on that. So let's talk about what's the best way for me at this point. I've been doing some neck curls, neck flexion, and some neck extension, but I've actually focused primarily in my own training on forward flexion based exercises. What do you think is something that I should be focusing on now?
Well, I would say flexion and extension are your best bet, right? Yeah. But you want to increase the frequency a little bit. Right. I would say train your neck 3 times a week. Actually, I would say train it every 48 hours, even if that involves going to the gym just to train your neck. If you want optimal results now, train it every 48 hours with very high volume, okay? I'm going to say 4 sets of 25 on every exercise. Okay, 4 by 25 now. Yeah. On your neck curl, you want 4 by 25. Okay, first of all, for the neck curl, do it with the plate loaded, right? Put a plate on your forehead, do the neck curl 4 by 25. For the back side of the neck, use that harness. Okay. 4 sets of 25. And feel free to use a faster tempo as well. You don't necessarily have to do the slow eccentric thing when training your neck. Again, it does come down to way to stretch. But you want to do a neck curl, neck extension, 4 by 25 every 48 hours. You will see amazing improvements, and try to increase the weight if you can as well. If you can complete what I'm telling you, increase the weight by 5 pounds. And your goal should be to hit 90 pounds for 4 by 25 on the neck curl. Like holding 2 45-pound plates stacked, doing that for high reps. If you do that, your neck's going to be huge, man.
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, that's a lot of weight. That's a lot more than I've been doing. I feel like, man, if I went in and did 4 sets of 25, I would be sore for a week. I know I would. Yeah. I'll probably work my way up to that volume, right?
Yeah. I mean, okay, you know with forearms and calves, how a lot of guys tend to do higher reps because the small range of motion. Yeah. It's kind of a similar concept with the neck, Right. But trust me on this, man. Trust me. 4 sets of 25. It's going to revolutionize your neck training.
All right.
And if you want to go next level stuff, this is more psychotic. When you get more advanced, you can actually do reps of 100, like reps of 100 to failure. That is very hard. Or you could do rounds, like just 3 minutes of straight neck extensions, things of that nature. Again, all the stuff comes from wrestlers and fighters and things of that nature.
Right,
you know?
right. Do you put a lot of stock in lateral flexion as well, or?
Yeah, I included it in the program, but it's not the most important thing. I would say flexion and extension is by far the most important thing. You have to do both of them, especially for like proper posture. You have to do both. You know, on the side it'll give you some extra gains. It might give you that last little bit of edge, that 10-20% edge. But I would say it's more so optional. But it will benefit you, certainly, you know. But a lot of guys, they have issues with the loading capacity.
Right, yeah.
You know, because the plates, you can't do more than 45 pounds.
Yeah.
So in that case, using a machine or like a neck harness where you could do side work would work, you know.
Right. What do you think about rotation? So there's some contraptions you can get where you kind of hook them up to your head.
Rotation. Yeah. It mainly benefits like wrestlers,
right,
you know, or guys who are getting punched in the face. It can mimic that.
Yeah.
Okay. It's specificity of training. So for anyone who's getting hit in the face, I would do some rotational work, you know, field athletes, all that guys like that. Right. But for just building muscle, you don't need it. No.
Gotcha. One thing that I've actually found, Alex, is that say once I get up to like a 45-pound plate and I'm putting that on my head, like it's uncomfortable, and I start to use my arms to cheat.
Yes.
I try not to do it, but it happens, and I use my abs, and like I feel like I almost get a better neck pump when I use like a 25 instead of a 45. So I'll do that sometimes, right? But one thing that I've started doing recently, and I mean like the last couple weeks to a month, is I'll just have my girlfriend push as hard as she can down on my head, and I'll even sometimes just try to isometrically hold it up as long as I can until it gives way, and then I'll come up again and she'll push. What do you think of that? Those two concerns. So the first one is that the plates, it's like I find I'm cheating and it's uncomfortable, and then the partner assisted stuff.
All right. In regards to being uncomfortable, right? You have to wear a hat. I don't know. Have you been doing this, wearing a hat?
I've tried it with a hat. Like, do you mean like a toque or a baseball hat?
Okay, like a toque. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like you have to have some type of headwear for protection. Or you need a heavy duty towel or something. You need to put some type of protection on your forehead. Otherwise, you're gonna get a big little ridge right in the middle of your forehead. You know, so you need like a fabric. You know, sometimes I'll bring a spare shirt and I'll use that. As long as you get some padding, you know, it's gonna sink in and it's not gonna hurt you. So you need padding, very, very, very important, and that'll eliminate the uncomfortable feeling. What's actually gonna be more comfortable for you is your hands. Okay, when you're doing 90 pounds, you're gripping two 45-pound plates, and because you're a short guy like me, you probably have like smaller hands there, so it's gonna be like, you know, a lot of grip.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the uncomfortable part, not your forehead. So as long as you wear like a fabric on top of your forehead, you're good to go, right? Then you asked me about manual resistance, right?
Yeah.
Very effective. Oh yeah, no, the cheating.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Means you're not strong enough, man.
Yeah.
That's all it means.
Yeah.
It's too heavy. The weight is too heavy. If you have to use your arms like a pullover type of motion and you feel your abs cramping up like crazy, the weight's too heavy for you. So you have to back down a little bit and work your way back up. And a good technique cue that I'll give you is at the end of the bench, you want to cross your legs. You want to anchor yourself. Because what happens is when your head's going back with a heavy weight, sometimes you're stretching, like you're opening up your midsection. You're stretching it so much that it creates too much pressure in that area. So if you can anchor your legs onto the back of the bench, right?
Gotcha.
You're gonna feel less pressure in your abs. Okay.
Yeah.
I hope you get what I'm saying here.
Yeah.
So
No,
you
I
have
do.
to make sure.
No, I hear it. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So cross those legs, okay, and refrain from using those arms. They're handlebars. Right. The best advice I can give you is to do neck curls with bands temporarily, or do it on the machine, because this will prevent your arms from doing any work, right? Just to get the mind-muscle connection. Once you have the mind-muscle connection and you know how to contract it without incorporating other muscles, then when you go back to doing it with the plate on your forehead, you're not going to be cheating anymore, you know?
Right. Yeah, and then the manual or partner-assisted stuff.
Yeah, that works very well. That's what most wrestlers do.
Yeah.
Wrestling, it's pulling, you know, it's pulling on the neck.
Yeah.
It's very effective.
Right.
You just, that'll work very nicely. And you're lucky you have a girlfriend that's willing to do that, you know, because...
It's weird, and that's another thing, right, is that a lot of guys are reluctant to do it in the gym even because you do get looks, or you'll get comments, people asking you like what you're doing, or you get taped and put on the internet if you're really lucky.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. Like I still see neck memes today, man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I go online, I see a guy, you know, he's just doing neck curls, he has a harness on, gym fail, you know, like that's not a fail, you know, he's just training his neck.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a weird thing, man. People don't train their necks. I don't understand it. You train your freaking calves, your forearm. You don't train your neck. Your neck is a muscle, bro. You know, and the thing is, it has the greatest impact on the way that you look.
Yeah.
Like anybody can do this experiment. Get your ass on. Sorry, am I allowed to swear here?
Yeah.
Get over to Photoshop, right? And widen out that neck, right? Use the liquefy tool. Boom. Make your neck freaking wider than your damn ears, right? Yeah. And you'll see how much better you look.
Yeah.
You know, look at Bill Goldberg. Look at Mike Tyson. Look at all these fighter guys. Big neck makes all the difference. You know?
Yeah, it's funny. I think I saw a photo you posted on your Instagram of Tanning Chatham, and his neck, he has a big like wrestler type neck, right? And I don't know if you did it, but someone photoshopped it to be smaller, and he just kind of looked kind of goofy looking. Like he went from looking masculine and muscular to looking kind of like a dweeb. And it's crazy how big of an impact just that one muscle can make, and yet it's the most neglected. And if people do it, they're ostracized for it.
Well, remember what I said before, the 6 essential areas. Neck is number 1, bro.
Yeah.
I chose neck as number 1. That's how important it is. And people are neglecting the most important muscle for looking big. If you get a 19-inch neck, it'll transform you completely. You will look much bigger if you have a wider neck than if you just got a chest bump or you got a bigger chest.
Well,
like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And one of the, at least in clothes, I feel like when the clothes come off, it changes a little bit. Especially from the side. Like for me, like we talked about this before, but I get this a lot, right? Like I'll be wearing a shirt and then it'll come off for whatever reason, and then people will be like, holy shit, like I didn't realize that was under there, kind of thing. And especially if I'm turned to the side, because like I have really big triceps, really big chest. So when I'm side on, like even like a lot of, say like my photos or like my best poses on stage, right? Like if I'm doing my routine, I'm doing a lot of side chest, a lot of side tricep, a lot of like oblique poses, that kind of thing, because that's how I look big. So it does depend on context, but if you're
100%.
wearing clothes, I think you're right, man. Like the neck, it can make a huge. Actually, this is interesting because I've seen a photo. There's a hip hop artist, Kid Cudi, and he happens to just have a huge neck, but he doesn't lift. Yeah, it's just genetic. Yeah, and you see a photo of him with a shirt on, and he looks really, really yoked. But then there's a photo of him with his shirt off, and he's just the skinny guy, like skinny fat, right? But if he's walking around, people assume that he's like pretty huge, probably, right? And then the other thing that convinced me of this was there was actually a Snapchat filter. I don't know if you're on Snapchat, but they have these filters, right, where you like press your head and you can put like puppy stuff on your nose and all that kind of stuff. There was one that they had where it was like the jacked version of the filter, and it would make you look jacked. And I did it to myself, and all it did was it made my neck really big. And I was like, damn, I was like, this filter is throwing stabs at me right now. Yeah. But it worked, man. It looked crazy. It made me look like more of a meathead in a way, but it definitely is a way to get a more muscular look, for sure, 100%.
Yeah. Honestly, it's the Reuter look. That's what it gives you. Yeah. It makes you look like you're on a ton of stuff. Yeah. You know, especially like imagine if you're just filming like in front of a video and it's cut off like at the neck area. You know, it's all you see. Yeah. You can be the skinniest guy down at the bottom, but if you have a big neck, sometimes people assume that you're this massive guy.
Yeah.
You
know? Absolutely.
Like I don't know, you seen Pete Rubish's neck, man? It's crazy.
Yeah. I think so. I don't know if I've noticed it, but it's something almost that subconsciously registers, I think. And with me, with that like natural bodybuilder bias, it's just not something that gets focused on, right? Because it does not matter on stage. But if you're just a general population, or you're just someone who's looking around subconsciously, you I think notice those the neck and those 6 that you mentioned. I'm totally able to get on board with that.
It's automatic, my friend. Yeah, and it also enhances your attractiveness too. You know, male models, they all have wider necks, man. It's a beautiful thing, and it actually makes the neck fat appear less apparent as well.
Yeah.
No, I've noticed.
I've noticed. Obviously, I think there are like always those idiosyncrasies. Like some people, even to me, right? Like I've grown my neck, I think like 1.5 inches, something like that, which is pretty good. Like it was really small starting out.
Yeah.
And some people will be like, you know, I prefer like the skinnier look, like, you know, it looks better in a collared shirt, but it's just not the muscular look that we like, right? So, but in any case, yeah, I do agree with you, man.
As meatheads, we want to look as big as possible.
Yeah.
You know?
Now, two other like really quick points on the neck, and then we'll wrap it up, man. It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah, likewise.
So one thing that I encountered, and this is probably for people who maybe are more new to it or they've been convinced and are going to start training. One thing that I used to get so often, or not so often, but quite often, more often than I'd like, are these splints going. Like I'd train my neck, and I would get like I would wake up with a kink almost, you know, in my neck.
Yeah, it's called a zinger.
So how do you deal with that, or is that a recurring issue for you now? Because you're doing crazy weight. Like when you mentioned to me you need to do 2 plates for 4 sets of 25, I was or whatever it was. I was like, nah, like that. Yeah. I'll have zingers for weeks doing that.
Yeah, when my neck was at its peak, it was over 19 inches. I was doing that for 100 reps, 90 pounds. You know,
crazy.
So
man.
Listen, the way I used to get that too. And in fact, when I used to do barbell back squats, I used to get zingers all the time. I used to have like neck problems, man. And when I was a kid, I always used to be that guy who would have problems when going down a slide or anything. So the way I got around this is very simple. You just have to do dynamic stretching before you train your neck. Yeah. You have to do dynamic stretching. So that means going up and down, right, left and right, rotational work in all directions, being here and just twisting. You want to do every single angle possible, right, just to loosen up that neck a little bit. Right, that's step number 1. And then secondly, you have to warm up your neck correctly. You can't just jump into crazy weights right off the bat. You have to, I would say, start like 5 pounds, right? Hit that for like 20 reps, 10 pounds, 20 reps. You almost want to pre-exhaust yourself, you know?
Yeah.
And I also believe that training your neck from all the angles will prevent this from happening too. You know? So you want to do the front, the back, and then even side work can actually prevent those zingers from appearing. But it mainly comes down to that. And then in some cases too, it's the form. You see a lot of guys, because we live sedentary lifestyles, we develop tonic necks, right? So you don't realize it, but some people are a little bit twisted.
Yeah,
right? They're a bit offset, especially if you work on a computer all day, WASD in one hand, mouse on the next. That causes postural issues, you know? So when you have postural issues and you do neck training, you're going to revert back to those postures, if you catch what I'm saying. You're going to end up neck curling in a twisting fashion. And when you do your neck extensions, you're going to go more on one side, you know, and that can cause imbalances and make you feel like you're getting these zingers. So it really comes down to stretching out the neck, warming up correctly, and using correct form. And that'll eliminate the problem 100%.
Right. And lastly, do you think that there are any safety concerns more so with neck training than other body parts? For example, one thing that I actually got commented quite frequently on my own neck and trap video was, no thanks, I don't want to get sleep apnea. Is that a concern?
Sleep apnea, it's debatable. I mean, we have seen studies that the bigger your neck gets, you expose yourself, well, there's a greater chance of developing sleep apnea, you know, because there's more pressure on the throat and everything. The thing is, though, when we look at those football players, most of them are on heavy amounts of drugs. So that's one factor to consider. And they're also very, very heavy in body weight. They weigh like 250, 300 pounds.
Right.
You know, so is it the muscle or is it because they have very fat necks? That's one thing that the studies aren't accounting for, you know, but it could just be that neck size as a whole, fat or not, could be problematic. Again, we're not too certain about this. I've spoken to guys who had 19-inch necks for their entire life. They've been training their neck for 30 years and they didn't have sleep apnea. You know, they never had problems. They never had injuries. So it really is like, we could say that it's a risk in a sense.
Right.
I would say it is a risk. And chances are it probably does increase your risk a little bit. But you know what? As a natural, your neck's not going to get like past 20 inches anyway. So is it that much of a concern? I don't really know. But that's something to think about. Right. Then in terms of like the safety of training the neck, is it bad for the cervical discs? Well, we don't know. I know bridging could be the most dangerous. That could be the most problematic. But in terms of standard neck flexion and extension, and you're not ego lifting, is it a problem? I don't think so.
Yeah.
And again, guys have been doing it for 30 years, no problems. Yeah. So again, it's like we don't really know about the safety requirements. We just know that bridging has the greatest risk.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of bridging personally. I've done it a little bit, but I'd rather just do straight flexion extension just because I'm not doing it for athletic reasons anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, that's kind of the case with any muscle though, right? Like I'm sure you can look up risks of doing back squats. Like they're all over the place, but it's just something you have to accept if you're going to take on this as a goal, and just do it in the smartest way that you can, which I think is just like anything else, being progressive. Like don't try to do a 1 rep max neck curl your first week of training it, right? Take it slow, progressively build up your strength. And this has been enlightening for me because it gives me some context as to what is achievable. It was kind of like when I first got into powerlifting, I thought I was super strong, but then there were guys, across the pond or in the States, me being in Canada, who were doing 100, 200 pounds more than me on the squat. And so it gives you some idea of what you can do, because there are not a lot of people, I don't think, in our community who are doing neck training on an elite level like I would say you are, right? So yeah, that's been very helpful actually.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
So Alex, I'm gonna wrap it up there. It's been an awesome conversation, man. It is a full 90 minutes, which is great. A lot of really solid
I enjoyed
content.
Myself very much, man. Speaking with you one-on-one. Yeah.
So hopefully it was informative for everyone else, and hopefully we'll be able to do it again sometime. You're in Canada yourself, so we're not that far. We should get together for a workout sometime, man, and film it.
Yeah, we absolutely should, man. I'm in Montreal. I can get to Toronto fairly easily.
Yeah.
But you're
I'm on the West Coast. I'm in BC, so I'm just outside Vancouver.
Okay.
But it's no
it's
problem.
Like 10 hours away or so.
It's a decent distance, but it's worth it. We don't have to go through customs or anything.
It's doable. We don't have to go to the States. It's doable, man. Yeah.
All right, brother. Well, it was real. It was fun chatting with you, man. And
it was a pleasure, Jeff. Thank you for having me on here today. I really appreciate it. I hope this benefits you and the viewers, and I look forward to continuing our discussions in the future.
All right, so that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching this conversation with Alex. Thank you so much, Alex, for coming on my channel and sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom with my subscribers. So if you guys want to find more of Alex's stuff, you can find all of that in the description box. I've linked it below. Like I said, I'm a big fan of his content, so if you guys like my stuff, I have a feeling you'll also like his stuff. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my podcast. I do have more of these interviews coming, and I think that the best thing to do is just upload them in both places as of now. I'm still trying to decide exactly how I'm gonna do that. If you did like this format of content and you'd like to see more of it, please let me know by commenting below, liking the video, and if you happen to be new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And I will see you guys in a couple days with another video. I'm working on a video on intermittent fasting, so I'm doing some research on that right now. I think you guys are really gonna like it, so stay tuned for that one, and I'll see you guys soon.